Nearly 150 years, the Battle of the Little Bighorn has been told through Custer's eyes. Bold charges, last stands, and heroic myths. But what if the real story didn't come from a general in blue, but from a lone Crow scout who survived when no one else did? Curly, just a teenager at the time, walked away from the battlefield carrying secrets the U.S. Army tried to silence. He saw the warning signs Custer ignored, the moment the 7th Cavalry collapsed, and the truths that were buried long before his body ever was. In this video, we're uncovering his account, the survivor's story that rewrites history. Stay with me until the very end, because what Curly reveals about Custer's last stand will change everything you thought you knew about America's most infamous defeat. But before we continue, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel to support our growing community. Curly, the young Crow scout who survived Little Bighorn in 1876, grew up far from the chaos of the Plains Wars. Born Oshish in 1859 near the Bighorn Mountains, he was raised by respected parents who taught him restraint and patience. By 16, Curly had become a skilled buffalo hunter, earning admiration not for reckless bravery, but for his sharp instincts. While other Crow youths rushed into battle, he observed quietly, listening to raiders return with tales that stirred his curiosity. His first contact with white settlers came at 12, trading buffalo hides at Fort Smith. The harsh trader's voice and strange goods left a deep impression, teaching him the value of silence and the ability to move easily between two worlds. Curly later recalled that as a boy he avoided trouble, but by 18 he was restless for war. In 1876, when U.S. troops rode into the Crow camp at Little Bighorn seeking scouts, he volunteered instantly. Yet his brother pulled him aside, insisting they head instead toward the Tongue River. Days of fruitless tracking followed, until news of Custer's defeat spread like wildfire. Amidst the chaos, Curly carried a captured Sioux rifle, knowing one mistake could cost him his life. The Army ignored Crow warnings, their disorganization plain to see. When scouts spotted a vast Sioux encampment near Rosebud Creek, General Terry pressed on recklessly. Soon his men attempted a dangerous river crossing. The current swallowed rifles, horses, and at least a dozen soldiers, disaster born of arrogance. At Clark's Ford, Curly regrouped with other scouts as Lakota war songs drifted on the wind. The arrival of Bonnie Bravo, a grizzled Métis fighter, underscored the Army's desperation. "Forget tracks, watch their fires," Bravo warned. Curly counted only 8 horses among them, a pitiful force against the Sioux's numbers. Even so, Terry split his men further, exposing just how fragile the Army's campaign had become. By spring 1876, Curly saw fear gripping the soldiers. They jumped at shadows, crouching behind makeshift barriers while scanning for Sioux snipers. He, in contrast, read the land with calm precision, checking soil, sniffing ash, tracing tracks. When he finally located the supply wagons, Curly offered only a nod. That night, while he sharpened his blade, soldiers whispered about Custer's approach. The general soon arrived, charming, sharp-eyed, and quick to hand out $25 per scout. Yet beneath his confidence, tension simmered. By June, Terry's camp along the Yellowstone was in chaos, mud-snarled wagons, clashing commands, and scouts painting their faces while officers mocked them. Scholars later called this the turning point, Army tactics colliding with native ways of war. Finally, 6 Crow scouts were chosen, Curly among them. On June 21st, a steamboat carried them to the mouth of the Rosebud. Curly even pressed a silver dollar into Custer's palm, a symbolic gift. But as orders rang out to break camp, the mood shifted. The stage was set for the disaster to come. That night, Mandan drums echoed as Custer hosted a strained feast. He offered hardtack and coffee, rations the Crow quietly discarded. Though each scout had been paid $600 in total, Curly sensed the hidden condescension. "Today only Crows circle," he warned, but Custer dismissed the omen with a laugh. At dawn, tension thickened. At Little Rosebud's fork, Curly studied deep hoofprints splitting like a serpent's tongue, one trail west toward the Bighorns, another north across the plains. Astride his sorrel mare Vic, Custer ordered the scouts to divide and report by sundown. Curley's path revealed pony droppings, parfleche bags, and by midday a trail wide enough for 800 horses, later confirmed in Cheyenne oral history. "They are close," Curley muttered, but Custer only hummed, "Gary Owen." 6 Crow scouts and 72 soldiers pressed on, their red guidons marking them like targets. At Ash Creek, Curley felt warm dung beneath his fingers. "You've found Indians," Custer said coldly. "I'll do the fighting." To the scouts, he reduced them to trackers. Unlike Terry, Custer radiated reckless certainty. "A man who fears no storm is struck by lightning," White Swan whispered. Soon smoke smudged the horizon. A hawk screamed overhead as they crested a ridge, and saw it, a city of 700 lodges. The ground itself seemed to shout warning. On June 24, 1876, Custer, convinced the Sioux were inferior, never imagined they had already outmaneuvered him. Along the Greasy Grass River, Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho encampments stretched before them. But it was the trophies on willow poles that froze Curley's breath. Scalps, some as blond as Custer's, swaying beside severed beards. Curley dropped one, still crusted with blood, onto the map table. Curley pointed to shattered Spencer cartridges. "Bluecoats came before us. The trails merge. All the Sioux are there." Custer brushed off the warning, his eyes instead fixed on a scalp's golden hair. "The Great Father sent me to conquer these savages," he declared, voice steady but hands trembling as the strands cut his skin. It was June 25, 1876. At 4:30 a.m., Curley's breath fogged in the pre-dawn chill as he and 5 Crow scouts moved silently, their ponies muffled on dew-soaked grass. Above them, Mandan's scouts scaled a sandstone bluff, silhouetted by the rising sun. "How many?" Custer pressed. "More than stars you can count," came the reply. The general's next words fell like a death sentence. "You Crow chiefs." That night, the scouts returned to find Custer's tent glowing. Bareheaded, scribbling notes, he admitted, "I may not survive this summer, but live, and I'll make you chiefs." As the men left, Curley lingered outside. Sioux victory songs drifted on the night air. One Mandan spat bitterly, "Tell Custer to keep his dogs in the valley. They'll paint us as Sioux." Curley clutched the silver dollar he'd once given Custer. "He hears only his own ghosts," he muttered. In Crow tradition, leadership was earned through courage, not promises. He pocketed the coin and rode back, the coyote howl he'd heard earlier still prickling his neck. At camp, he found Custer bent over a map, Major Reno grim at his side. "The Mandan must stay low," the general muttered, ignoring Curley's urgent warning. The Sioux had shifted camp toward the greasy grass. Polishing his revolver, Custer dismissed him. "Eat, then take 2 sentries and watch the hills." At first light, Curley awoke to the sound of shouts. Through the cook-fire haze, Curley saw ponies gathering. White Swan and Hairy Moccasin rode in, breathless. The Sioux are close. Custer waved them off. "They're eager. Let them run." Reckless, deaf to Crow caution. By midday, the 7th Cavalry trotted down Reno Creek, Curley guiding them past an abandoned lodge where 2 warriors lay dead, faces blackened in mourning. "Bad medicine," White Swan whispered. Only the Crow grasped the meaning. The Sioux had split their forces, laying false trails, Sitting Bull's perfected tactic to draw enemies in too deep. Curley urged caution. "The trail leads west." "What do you command?" Custer's eyes lit. "Then we'll chase them." By dusk at Talent Creek, he abruptly halted, scouts arguing in frustration. "He hesitates," Curley noted. At 3:15 p.m., Custer's battalion forded the river. Curley lingered on a knoll as a mounted scout scribbled a warning. "Hurry. Large camp." Custer read it and smirked. "Charge now." That ends their journey. Gunfire cracked. Bullets hissed past as Curley crouched behind granite, 3 rounds left in his belt. Across the ravine, a Sioux warrior lay sprawled. Ahead, the Little Bighorn ran red. Custer pressed a slip into Curly's hand, orders for Reno to attack. Reno's reply changed nothing. As gunfire roared, Curly's pony slid down a coulee, hardtack rattling in his saddlebag. Before him sprawled an immense Sioux encampment, later counted at 1,800 lodges. The land had chosen its dead. Curly seized a fallen warrior's Winchester and ammunition pouch, the man's painted face frozen in rage. From the ridge, the valley unfolded like nightmare, bodies scattered across the grass, Custer's men collapsing one by one. In the distance, a lone figure in blue stood encircled. Custer. For hours, Curly clung to the earth beside a corpse, the stench of blood and powder heavy, as Lakota war cries swallowed Custer's final volleys. At dusk, Curly crawled uphill. By dawn, his stolen horse staggered into Terry's camp. No words were needed. His gestures told the story. For 36 hours, he carried dispatches between Terry, Reno, and the steamboat Far West. Near Last Stand Hill, he passed crews stacking corpses like firewood. One soldier still clutched a dirt-smeared photograph. Curly looked away. On June 27th, as the Far West prepared to leave with the wounded, Curly stood at the gangplank. Behind him, smoke curled from the valley where Custer's bones lay unclaimed. No medals for the Crow Scouts, no speeches. Only rain-smudged dispatches. Curly rode home, his story silenced for decades by an army eager to bury its blunders. Yet the land remembered, every ridge marked by battles, by Crow choices, and graves that whispered truths no report could. He lived to 96, outlasting Custer, the frontier, and the myths that twisted his name. Branded a hero, coward, liar, he was simply a man caught between two worlds, trusted by neither. The real tragedy? His truth was buried long before his body. Imposters sold his story while the real Curly kept silent, watching history reshape him into legend. For him, Little Bighorn wasn't an end, but the beginning of battles against memory, betrayal, and a nation that preferred a good lie to a hard truth. So what's your take? Drop a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories.